Hello, everybody. Um, Apparently, I'm streaming live now on the YouTube. Today, I want to talk a bit about portraiture and what I believe portraiture does and why it is so important that to my why it's so important to my healing practice. My healing practice is unique as I've created it on my own. I created it through doing portraits of people. And if you have followed me or attended any of these pandemic portrait live meetings, you'll see that the connection that I have with the people that I'm doing portraits with is unique. It's so unique, in fact, that I have written over and over again in writing about my work, because as artists, we write about our work, that the connection is more than physical. That me looking at you and seeing you and talking with you, that's great, but it is only a very small part of the actual connection that's happening between you and I. And that connection is, I don't have words for what it is. Right? It's God, it's spirit, it's, the fact that we are all one. When I'm doing a portrait of someone, I get to experience myself through them. And what I hope and believe is that they can experience themselves through me. And that experience is very, very unique. When I work with clients, I work with them 4 times. I do their portrait, which usually takes between an hour and an hour and a half, and we communicate. Again, if you've seen some of the other pandemic portrait live things I've done, you'll see that, yes, in fact, there is communication going back and forth. What I am doing, like as the artist, is drawing and painting you, yes, but I'm also communicating with you, and I'm communicating with you deeply, and I'm stepping out of my ego. Now, that may seem a bit counterintuitive, only because, like, I'm making a piece of art. How can I be stepping out of my ego? Like, it is coming from somewhere else. There was a time when I had to think about making a portrait. And while I was making the portrait, I had to think about, does it look like them? Yes. I had to go through that over and over and over again until I mastered it or something. It's not mastered it the way anyone would master it. It's master it the way I need to master it, the way it needs to incorporate with me and my being. And so once I've reached that, I continually wrote, as I mentioned earlier, there is a deeper connection than just physical. And when I get rid of the physicalness of the world around me, when I get rid of that, this is here because I see it. Because, I've done enough hallucinogens to know that that's not true. And it's all still happening in my mind. So just because I see it doesn't mean it's true. Just because I experience it doesn't mean it's true. What is true? And I see that connection that I make with the client, the connection I make with someone that I'm doing a portrait of, as being what's true. And I see them as myself. They can see me as them. And we get to connect. Now, while I'm doing the portrait, I'm not thinking about what I'm making. These aren't made to be flattering. They're just made to be. Now, if I just drew a single straight line and gave it to them and said, this is a painting of you, they would have a lot to say, right? They would say, no, it isn't. Like, this isn't who I am. They would say it's just a line. They would say all sorts of things. They would say, you know, they would search for meaning and say things. Now, when I go out in the world, I realize that everything I experience is me, right? Even that line on the page. Like the portrait of someone else can be utilized as a portrait of myself. But if I look at this and I see, obviously, it's someone else, I could dismiss it. But when I'm doing a painting of you, what that allows my sitter, the person I'm doing a painting of, to do is experience that personally. I also get to be the recipient of all the judgment. So if they don't like something, if they don't appreciate it, or if they don't see something that they want to see, they're going to put it on me. And that's actually a really good place for them to put it. That way I can slowly kind of dish it back to them. Right? I had one person tell me, "Oh, you made me look like an immigrant." And I was shocked by that, because it's not like I put him next to an apple cart, or I gave him, you know, anything that an immigrant, whatever that looks like, I don't know, would have. I just drew him. So upon the end of our second meeting, I asked him, "Was your dad an immigrant?" And he paused and said, "Yeah." And I said, "Okay, we're going to talk about that." Like, because he didn't want to, you know, he wanted to talk about how his dad hurt him and all of these things. But what we ended up really discovering was his fear of being seen a certain way, and his embarrassment by, you know, like that he carried as a child about his dad being an immigrant and not having to address his dad's immigrant status, like in school, like the fear that he had to carry. Now, all of that is to be said that when I do a portrait of someone, maybe I'm gleaning all of this information. But what the portrait helps me do is get my sitter, get the person who's sitting across from me, to tell me about themselves. Because you, just like I, are imperfect. We're all perfect. There's nothing wrong with us. I know we like to think things. You know, we like to live in a world that states like, oh, there is this perfect, we can never reach it. But that's a weird thing to be defining. Because if a baby is born perfect, which, I mean, depending on your definition of the word, that's really like 10 fingers, 10 toes, right? Like, is that it? Or are we going to define perfect by the standards of a 50-year-old? It's really difficult to have that conversation. So perfect changes all the time. What is perfect is changing all the time. What's perfect on the moon is going to be very different than what's perfect on the earth. What's perfect in India is going to be very different than what's perfect in Argentina. So because of that, perfect has to be something that, like in my mind, something that we all possess and we all are. Like, even if we're in active addiction, even if we're, you know, even if we have shame, perfect is what we are. Now, moving forward from that is also perfect. Staying there is also perfect. Now, it's not about dismissing it. It's about stopping this idea of good and bad, right, wrong. And by doing the portrait work that I do, I get to sit with people and experience the world through them, and they through me. And when I do portraits with clients, the client work I do is really important to me because I'm passing on a message that you have the answer. We're here to recover yourself, not recover me or recover some idea that I put in your head or that your parents put in your head or that teachers put in your head. None of that matters. You matter. And if you look to yourself, you'll see that all of the answers you require are there. I did a portrait, I don't know, a week ago, maybe. It was a Saturday, so maybe 10 days ago, of Pamela Davenport is her last name. I thought it was Rueda, but she called me yesterday, and she had some issues that she wanted to just talk about. And she's not a client, right? Like, she's just someone that I did a portrait of for fun. So like, even in the portrait that we did, something got stirred up. And in that stirring up, she's looking for herself. Her soul is opening to herself. And yet she doesn't know how to work with that. She doesn't know how to deal with that. So now that we were able to have that conversation, it turned out that like she was ready for more experience. She's ready for more. She's ready to recover more of herself. And so we put her on that path, and now she's out and adding awareness to her day rather than just knowledge, rather than just this idea that like, oh, she picked something up. So I don't know if I did anything in that. I don't know if we did anything in this talk, but I'm going to end it now. I'm getting distracted. I'm not present. I was supposed to do a portrait. We're going to move that. That's going to happen. I'll let you guys know when it does. Maybe doing a portrait with another artist. So hopefully you guys enjoy me in that. Have a great day.